I died holding my son in my arms on the cold pavement, under the city lights while my wife laughed somewhere across town, raising a toast to her first love's birthday. I remember the exact moment it happened. His small fingers went still in mine. The fever that had ravaged his body finally won. And I, helpless, broken, screaming into a night that didn't care, felt my own heart stop too. We had nothing that evening. No car, no money, not even enough for a taxi to the hospital. All I had was him and the last ounce of strength I could use to run through traffic, begging strangers to help. But no one stopped. Not one. I called her again and again. Her phone rang, then went silent. She was busy. Later, I would find out why. She wasn't at work. She wasn't stuck in traffic. She was dressed in red, wearing the smile she hadn't given me in years, is sitting next to the man she once told me not to worry about. They were surrounded by wine, candles, friends, while I was surrounded by silence, despair, and the lifeless body of our child. I used to believe love could survive anything. That if I gave her everything, my loyalty, my heart, my time, she'd never betray me. I was wrong. Because while I was dying in the street with our son, she was living her best life without us. And that night, everything changed. My name is Ayan. For the longest time, I believed I had the kind of love people spend lifetimes searching for. The kind that begins with a smile and ends with two old souls sitting side by side, watching the world go by. It started back in college. Zoya was the kind of girl who turned heads without trying. Not just because of her beauty, but because of the way she carried herself, like she knew exactly who she was. Strong, smart, unapologetically independent. And me? I was the quiet one. The boy who liked books more than clubs, silence more than noise. I never thought someone like her would even notice someone like me. But she did. It began with shared lectures, coffee after class, long walks that turned into late-night calls. Somewhere between borrowed notebooks and rain-soaked confessions, we fell in love. Real love. At least that's what I believed. She told me about her past, about Adil, the guy she loved once but said she'd outgrown. It was young love, she'd said, brushing it off like a chapter closed long ago. I chose you, Ayan. I want a future, not a memory. I held on to those words like gospel. We got married 2 years after graduation. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony, close friends, a few tears, and promises we both believed in. I worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. Zoya opened a small boutique with the savings we both scraped together. Life was simple, beautiful in its ordinariness. And when our son, Ryan, was born, everything changed. In the best way. He was the light in our home. Bright-eyed, curious, always smiling. We weren't rich, but we had joy. We had love. Or so I thought. The cracks started small. Zoya began coming home late. She'd brush past me, barely making eye contact, diving into her phone like it held her oxygen. When I asked, she'd sigh and say, "The boutique's been stressful. Let me breathe." I didn't push. I trusted her. Even when she stopped laughing at my jokes. Even when she began dressing differently. Even when she spent more time on her phone than with her son. I told myself it was just a phase. That we'd get through it. That she loved Usma still. But love doesn't look away when your child is sick. Love doesn't ignore 17 missed calls from a husband screaming for help. Love doesn't celebrate an old flame's birthday while your family is falling apart. And yet, that's exactly what she did. Back then, I was still the man who believed in second chances. Still the husband who brought flowers home on Fridays. Still the father who told bedtime stories and held his wife in the silence of midnight. I didn't know I was loving someone who'd already left me behind. I didn't know that while I was building a home, she was digging her way out of it. Now I do. It started with a dress. Not just any dress, the dress. Silky, crimson red. Strapless. The kind she used to say she'd never wear. "I like subtle," she told me once. Bold clothes make you look like you're trying too hard. But there it was, hanging on the back of our bedroom door. New. Price tag still dangling. Ryan had been burning with fever for 2 days. I hadn't slept. Neither had he. And yet Zoya walked in that night like she was preparing for a magazine shoot. "You're going out?" I asked, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. She barely looked up from the mirror as she did her makeup. "Yeah, just dinner. Old college friends. Can it wait? He needs you tonight. I've been here all day, Ayan. I need a break too." It wasn't true she'd been in and out, barely home. But I didn't argue. What was the point? I wrapped Rayan in another damp towel, cradling him close, whispering lullabies with a cracking voice. She left 15 minutes later, perfume trailing behind her, phone buzzing in her hand. That night, Rayan's condition worsened. I panicked. He was sweating, shivering, gasping for breath. I tried calling Zoya. Once, twice, 17 times. No answer. I held him in my arms and ran. No car. No wallet. Just desperation and a prayer. People looked. No one helped. Taxis passed by. One even slowed and then sped off when I told him I couldn't pay. Eventually, I sat down on the sidewalk outside the hospital, too exhausted to stand, rocking my son like the world hadn't ended yet. He was unconscious by the time someone finally noticed us, and even as doctors ran down the hallway with him in their arms, I kept checking my phone. Still nothing from Zoya. The next morning, she finally came home. Hair messy. Lipstick faint, but visible. That red dress crumpled in her hand. "Oh my God. Ayan, why didn't you tell me?" she gasped when she saw me sitting on the floor outside Rayan's room. I didn't answer. She leaned in, tried to touch me. "I swear, I didn't see the calls. My phone was on silent. Where were you?" My voice didn't even sound like mine. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "Just dinner. Zara's birthday. You know Zara." "No, I don't. And you weren't at any restaurant." Her eyes flickered. "How do you know that?" I stood, slowly. Pulled out my phone. Opened her Instagram. She forgot her private story was still visible to me. A boomerang. Wine glasses clinking. Caption: "Cheers to you, Adiel Dizzy, just like old times." Adiel. The name she swore she buried years ago. The man she promised was just a memory. But that night, while our son fought to breathe, she was toasting the man she once loved with my last name still on her ID. And just like that, everything cracked. I couldn't sleep that night. Not at the hospital. Not with the beeping machines and Rayan's fragile breaths holding my heart hostage. Not with Zoya sitting beside me, pretending. She cried, held his hand. Even whispered, "Mama's here, baby. Mama's sorry." But all I saw was the clink of wine glasses in her story. All I heard was that name a deal ringing like a fire alarm in my head. I stared at the ceiling, fists clenched, chest heavy. Was it just dinner? Was I overthinking? But then the questions come quiet at first, then screaming in my ears. Why didn't she pick up? Why didn't she call back? How could she be out celebrating while our son was burning with fever? And most importantly, why him? I wanted to ask. God, I wanted to scream. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the stupid hope that I was wrong. I kept replaying every moment in my head. Her sudden change in behavior. The way she flinched when I said Adiel's name that time last month. The boutique emergencies. The long showers. The silence. I looked at her again. Hair tied back. No makeup. A pale version of the woman who smiled in an Instagram story just hours ago. Was she pretending now, or pretending then? My throat was dry, but I forced the words out. Why didn't you answer my calls? She blinked, slowly. I told you. My phone was on silent. The music was loud. I didn't see you posted a story, Zoya. She froze. You had time to tag him, add emojis, write a cute little caption, but not check 17 missed calls? Her eyes watered. Ayan, I didn't know it was that serious. You've taken care of Ryan before. I thought you thought it was just another fever. Silence. I was holding our son while he went unconscious, I said, voice cracking. You were holding a wine glass. Tears ran down her cheeks. I'm sorry. But I didn't want sorry. I wanted truth. I wanted to believe she was still mine. But every inch of my gut said I'd already lost her. Are you seeing him again? She gasped. No! God, no! It was just dinner. Zara invited us. He happened to be there. You toasted him, Zoya. That's what killed me the most. Not that she went. Not that she laughed. But that she raised her glass to someone else. To him. She reached for my hand. I made a mistake. I should have been here. I know that. Please don't turn this into something it's not. But wasn't it already? Wasn't the truth staring me in the face reflected in every lie she whispered to herself to sleep at night? My silence dried into hours. She sat beside me. Occasionally glanced at her phone. I wondered if she was waiting for a message. From him. Every beep from her device made me flinch. Was it audio checking in? Thanking her for last night? Planning the next one? I hated that my mind even went there. I hated that I no longer trusted the woman I built my life with. At some point, I walked into the hospital corridor just to breathe. I leaned against the wall, ran my hands down my face. Tried to remember the last time she looked at me with love in her eyes, and I couldn't. All I could see was her smiling across a table, lost in a world I wasn't invited to. Back in the room, Ryan stirred slightly. I rushed to his side, brushing his hair back. He opened his eyes for a second. Weak. Dazed. But alive. Baba, he whispered, barely audible. Tears blurred my vision. I'm here, champ. I'm right here. Zoya stood behind me, watching. She looked devastated. Maybe she really did regret it. But even regret doesn't undo what's already broken. And in that moment, as I held our child's fragile hand and felt my own heart barely holding on, I realized something painful. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about absence. She'd left me emotionally long before she left physically. She just didn't have the courage to admit it. And now I didn't know if I had the courage to keep pretending either. 3 days later, Ryan was stable enough to be discharged. The doctor gave me a long list of medications and a strict warning: no stress, no exposure, and definitely no emotional shocks. If only I could promise that. We returned home in silence. Zoya tried to help, but I kept my distance. She hovered like a ghost in her old house, unsure where she was welcome anymore. That night, Ryan finally slept peacefully. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and turned off the light. As I walked out, I saw Zoya standing in the hallway, holding 2 mugs of tea. The same way she used to when we were newlyweds. I made Ginger you used to like that. I took the mug without a word. We sat in the living room, surrounded by silence thicker than any argument. I haven't spoken to him since that night, she said softly. I blocked him. Deleted everything. I swear. Why now? I asked, finally looking at her. Because you got caught? She flinched. He was a part of my past. It meant nothing. If it meant nothing, then why did you look so happy in that video? Her eyes welled up again, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or grief. Maybe both. I went to bed without saying another word. But something didn't sit right. I'd never been the suspicious type. Never checked her phone. Never followed her. But now, that was my only companion. The next morning, I waited until she left to run errands. Then I did something I never imagined I'd do. I logged into the old tablet we used to share. The one she'd long forgotten about. It was still connected to her cloud account. I opened her synced messages. What I found made my blood run cold. They hadn't just reconnected recently. They'd been talking for months. Hundreds of messages, voice notes, photos, and not just casual hellos. There were dates. Can't wait to see you again. I miss how things used to be. Do you ever think about what life would have been like if we never broke up? The words blurred in front of me. My hands shook. Then one voice note. His voice. You look stunning last night. I don't care if he finds out anymore. I want you back, Zoya. For real this time. I sat frozen. This wasn't a mistake. It was an affair. Emotional. Maybe physical. Definitely intentional. Everything she said. Every tear she shed. Every sorry she whispered, it was all a cover-up. And the worst part? While I was begging taxis to stop, screaming for help with our dying son in my arms, she was with him. Planning a future that didn't include me. I didn't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I heard the door creak. Zoya walked in carrying grocery bags. She smiled hesitant, hopeful. I looked at her. Really looked. And all I saw was a stranger wearing my wife's face. You left the tablet synced, I said quietly. She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. I held up the screen. Her lies glowing back at her. She dropped the bags. Eggs cracked across the floor. Tears spilled instantly. Ayan, wait, please listen. But I wasn't listening anymore. Because something inside me had already broken beyond repair. You left the tablet synced. That's all I said. But it was enough. Zoya stood frozen, her face drained of all color. The grocery bags had fallen, eggs cracked like our marriage messy, shattered, impossible to clean up. Ayan, please, she whispered, stepping forward. Don't. My voice cracked like dry wood. I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved with everything I'd held in for days, for months, maybe years. I saw everything. The messages, the voice notes, the pictures. Him. She shook her head, trembling. It wasn't what it looked like. I swear, I never. Don't lie to me again, Zoya. I roared, slamming the tablet on the coffee table. She flinched as it clattered to the floor. I begged the universe to let Ryan live that night. I stood on the street crying, with his little body limp in my arms, praying he'd breathe again. And where were you? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know it was that serious. You knew he was sick. You just chose someone else over us. She covered her mouth, sobbing. I paced the room, fists clenched. How long, Zoya? How long have you been cheating on me in your head while pretending to be my wife? It wasn't like that, you know? I stared at her, eyes burning. You said you missed him, that you wondered what life would have been like, that you looked forward to seeing him again. So tell me, Zoya, was I just a filler while you waited for him to come back? Her knees buckled. She fell to the couch, gasping through her sobs. I was lonely, Ayan. You were always working, always tired. We stopped talking, stopped feeling. I didn't mean for it to go this far. So this is my fault now? I laughed bitterly. I carried the weight of this family while you played dress-up in your boutique and daydreamed about your ex. And when our son was dying, you were out toasting your first love. She looked up, her voice barely a whisper. He said things I needed to hear. I froze. What did you just say? She covered her mouth again, but it was too late. That sentence was the final blow. The bullet straight through my chest. You needed to hear it from him? I repeated, numb. Not your husband? Not the man who stood by you through miscarriages, through your father's death, through everything? Her silence was my answer. My world tilted. I couldn't believe this was the same woman I built a life with. The same woman I once thought I couldn't live without. I turned toward the stairs. Ayan, please don't leave, she cried. I'm not leaving, I said coldly. But you are. She looked at me, horrified. What? You're going to stay with your mother tonight. You don't belong here right now. But, Rayan doesn't need a mother who's emotionally checked out. He needs stability, honesty. He needs me. Yeah, he needs me. She tried to reach for me. I stepped back. Pack your things. Her face twisted in grief. Ayan, please. Don't do this. I love you. I shook my head slowly. No, Zoya. You loved the idea of me. But when things got hard, when it really mattered, you chose him. And for once, I chose me. Zoya left that night. No shouting. No drama. Just a quiet, broken woman clutching a small suitcase as she walked out of the home we built together. I closed the door behind her, and I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, the silence in the house didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace. Rayon stirred upstairs. I climbed up to check on him, and when I saw his tiny chest rise and fall, I smiled. He was safe. He was breathing, and he was mine. The next few weeks were hard. Zoya texted, called, begged to meet. I ignored her. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't unhear those words. He said things I needed to hear. I realized I had spent so long pouring from a cup that was never full for me. So long trying to be everything for a woman who still longed for someone else. One evening, I sat with Rayon on the couch. He was drawing with crayons, tongue poking out in concentration. "Papa," he said suddenly, "Mommy coming home?" I paused. "I don't know, buddy." He blinked, big brown eyes full of innocent hope. "You still love her?" My heart clenched. "I loved her very much," I said gently. "But sometimes love isn't enough." He thought about it, then nodded like he understood far more than a child his age should. That night, I typed a message to Zoya. "I will never stop respecting you as Rayon's mother, but as my wife, you're no longer someone I can trust. Let's talk through the lawyer. I'll file for separation first. If you truly want to be in our son's life, prove it. Not to me, but to him." She replied once. "I'm sorry, Ayan, for everything. I never stopped loving you, but I understand. I broke something sacred." And that was that. 6 months passed. The boutique shut down. I heard Zoya moved in with her mother permanently. Rumors came and went, but I stayed out of it. I had my own healing to do. I learned to cook breakfast without burning it. Started drawing again, something I hadn't done since college. Took Rayon to the park every Sunday. And for the first time, I lived not just for someone else but for myself too. Then, one rainy evening, I ran into someone at the pharmacy. She held an umbrella and an armful of children's vitamins. Her name was Amna. We used to be classmates in med school before I dropped out for Zoya's boutique dreams. She smiled. I smiled back. A week later, we had coffee. We didn't talk about exes or pain or broken dreams. Just books and favorite childhood cartoons. And our kids. And it felt normal, easy. One evening, as I watched Rayon fall asleep, his tiny fingers curled around my thumb, I realized something. Zoya didn't just break my heart. She gave me back to myself.